Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Unknown Truth podcast. It's a pleasure to be speaking to you today about something we're very passionate about, something that is essential for everyone, regardless of age, background, or career, and that's financial literacy. In a world where financial decisions impact our daily lives, having the knowledge and skills to manage money wisely can be the difference between financial struggle and financial success. We'll be joined today by guest speakers who specialize in different aspects of personal finance, whether it's budgeting, investing, insurance, or retirement planning. They'll share their wisdom and help us guide you on your financial journey. Now, a little bit about myself. I'm Jen Beck, founder of Stellar Financial Services, part of the Miliari Group. And I was born with a plastic spoon in my mouth. My family wasn't rich, quite the opposite. When I was born, my mom and dad were living with my mom's parents. Eventually, they got their own apartment and eventually bought a condemned property, refurbished it to a point where we could finally get an occupancy permit and live there. Both my parents worked. My father worked rotating shifts in General Motors as an assemblyman building Cadillacs, so I rarely saw him. My parents often would argue about where the money goes, and these arguments often ended up becoming physical. My father wanted to spend it. My mom wanted to put it towards future things like education and whatnot. I never want any family to suffer what my family did because of money. And that's one of the reasons I do what I do, to help people learn how to live their best financial lives and avoid that kind of stress. Before we dive into today's topic, let me introduce you to some of the other experts you'll meet in future and they're going to share with you a bit about themselves, their background, and their passion. First up, Vivi.
Well, hi there, everybody. Like Jen said, I'm Vivi Hernandez, and I was born and raised in Puerto Rico. I came to the U.S. because I joined the Army from Puerto Rico. I thought I was going to do that for 5 years. That was my initial contract. But I ended up loving it, and I stayed for 22 years. So as a child, I can tell you that I saw about half of my family members had a traditional family dynamic, meaning the man worked and the woman stayed at home with the kids, cooked, cleaned, did, the laundry, etc. And the other half, which included some of my aunts, were like double income families. And I noticed that my aunts, especially the ones that were single, right, they had their own income. And even if it wasn't a lot, they still had a lot more freedom than the ones that depended on their spouse or someone else for money. And so being able to have that perspective, like of empowerment, guess who I wanted to be like? So on financial literacy, all I can say is I wish I would have been more curious about business ownership back then and how I could be successful as a business owner. However, when I think about it, growing up, the only business owners that I knew worked in their shops. And so that didn't interest me too much because I was a very curious kid and I loved, exploring the world and all that stuff. And so not being able to travel, yeah, no, I don't think so. So I didn't want to be stuck in one place. And that's what I saw was actual more self-employment than business ownership. And so also the school system, they didn't teach anything about finances when I went to school. So the only people I saw that were wealthy or rich were those with federal jobs, like my dad, politicians, celebrities, and drug dealers. So I made it a point to graduate high school and get as far away from all that as possible. And with that, I'll let Jen introduce the other members.
All right. Thank you, thank you, Vivi. And next up is Alexis.
Hey everybody. Yes, I'm Alexis Wallace. So for me, been in this financial service industry for a little over a year and a half. And just like BB, I am a retired military service member. I was a Army warrant officer and served for a little bit over 24 years. But when I transitioned out of the military and into the financial services, I did realize how uninformed and misinformed I was about the financial world. And while growing up, my education on finances was just how to balance a checkbook and pay bills. I was taught that you always want to have some money in the bank so you'll be able to pay the bills to take care of the home, take care of the house. What I wasn't taught was the concept of how you make your money work for you and how you make your money grow for you. But as I journeyed throughout my military career and I met people from different backgrounds, I definitely expand my knowledge of finances as well as the importance of saving and saving early as well as investing. But one thing, as I was growing up, and one of the things that my dad did was retire super early. And that was something that I said that I was going to do as well. So my dad, he retired in 2002 at the age of 51. And until this day, he has never thought about getting another job. But he has bought a whole bunch of Harley bikes and he'd ride his bike around the world. So actually, and in the next couple of weeks, my dad will be 74 and he's planning on taking that trip again. But when we talk about the podcast and these series, what I hope that you will learn to take away are the tricks and the trades to help you do what I'm planning to do and do what my dad did is become financially secure so that you can go and live the way that you want to live and do the things that you want to do, but you don't have to worry about finances being a factor as to why you don't and why you can't. So thanks, Jen.
Awesome. Thank you, Alexis. And next up is Katrina.
Thanks, Jen. So my name is Katrina. I've been with the firm a little over a year now. I am a recent graduate from the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign with my degree in finance. And frankly, with my family, I always had a mixed upbringing when it came to financials. My father got lucky in life that he met someone who taught him a lot when it came to investments and saving money and basically how to grow it a bit with the resources they had back in his day. My father's now 72, retired. He spends his days in the house recuperating nowadays. But my mother grew up in South America where they hid money underneath a couch, in a water bottle, piggy bank, whatever you can find. And that was sort of their version of savings. And I'm not saying that's all colonials, that just happens to be my mother and some more traditional, not as well-informed Latin Americans. So my parents had given us a pretty good background, at least my dad, within how to figure out our financials. But as time went by and unfortunately some health issues occurred, we sort of found out that although he had invested money, he had not looked into newer, more flexible options. And to that, he hadn't looked into bigger growth options because of his fear of risk and other things, or because he just wasn't really aware of the newer options. As he sort of explained to me and my brother, before we were born, certain, women couldn't have credit cards. Credit cards didn't even exist at one point. You couldn't get microloans. You couldn't get business loans. IULs didn't exist yet, all kinds of other things. So with that, we sort of had to step up and figure out ways where we could invest differently, see what we could do. And as I said, my mother, love her to death. And I will mention loving my parents to death a lot because just in case they're watching this. But she believed in saving money under a couch, so she wasn't always understanding. So we sort of learned about, future planning and insurance options and things like that. And also just within my own background of finance, I sort of focused on corporate finance and investments and then sort of just barely covered everything else. So there was a lot I was left out on. And also just coming from the Hispanic community, they're not the most financially educated. Love to my Latinos, but we know it ourselves. And so with that, I'm just sort of hoping that, with all this, the Latin community, everyone else, will learn, how to plan for the future, how to not have your kids end up in tough situations, and for young people to figure out maybe what they might want to look into investing that they didn't think of, because, we're young now, but we ain't going to be forever.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Katrina. And like Katrina was saying, financial literacy is rarely taught in schools. You're lucky to get a semester of finance taught to you in high school. So, if your parents don't talk about it, your friends don't talk about it, and it's not taught in school, where do people learn about it? And that's why we're here today. And today we're going to cover some key concepts of financial literacy and why it's important now more than ever. Data from the 2024 index reveals how financial literacy in the US has hovered around 50% for 8 consecutive years, with a 2% drop in the past 2 years. So that is every other person you talk to is basically financially illiterate. So we increase our financial literacy by getting educated. And that's why we're doing this podcast and speaking to you now, because it's our passion, our crusade to help families in America reach their financial goals through education and planning. At its core, financial literacy is the understanding of how money works, right? It's about having the knowledge and ability to make sound financial decisions, whether that's budgeting, saving, investing, or understanding the complexities of credit, loans, and taxes. Now I'm going to let each panelist discuss a financial literacy item and the unknown truth that they've discovered through their financial journey. First off, Lexis.
Okay, so the thing I want to talk about is more on the financial literacy side. Not so much of an unknown truth, but tell you just how important it is, and it is financial planning and being able to do that early. And like I said, I knew it was a important topic, but it's something that has become much more of an emphasis for me just coming into this financial career field. And the importance of doing it early, because every year that you wait to get your finances in straight and you look to try to save and be financially secure, it can take so much off of what you could have in your later years. But one of the things that I see, especially when I go out and I go to places like grocery stores, I go to fast food restaurants, and just different places where they offer some type of customer service, it's just the number of elderly people that are working. Now, I'm not sure of their current situation and why they work, because I do know some people, they just want to work. They want to be out there, they want to be next to people. But, it is a little bit eye-opening to me that there may be some people that just didn't have enough saved up or started that financial planning early enough to be able to enjoy their retirement at their retirement age. And then, some of the contributing factors to that is just the cost of living is rising. We see what the economy is going through right now. Wages are remaining the same. You also got the implementation of technology into some of the workforce. So it is definitely important when it comes to the financial planning. One, doing it and making sure that you do it early. Thanks, Jen.
Awesome. Thank you, Alexis. And Katrina, what is your unknown truth?
So with my unknown truth, I sort of broke in half. The first one has to do with credit cards. Personally, so I grew up with a lot of friends who had the parent building their credit, but personally, my parents told me I can wait. Although we are taught about credit cards in school, it is one of the first topics in our financial literacy class. Though I'll admit the topics have hopefully changed since I've been in high school. But when I was in high school, it was like credit, debit, a little bit about the market, throwing a tax form at you, and telling you to figure it out. But we hadn't learned that much with responsibilities, and they sort of emphasized it a little but not a lot, and so some people got themselves in debt a lot. Some people actually used it to their advantage, built it really well. Again, since my parents didn't start me on credit, when I started going to college and I got my first credit card, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna get an apartment and this and that, and that's when someone told me, well, what's your credit score? I was about a week away from getting a credit card before this, so I had a credit score of 0. This is when I found out that apparently in the US, a credit score is incredibly important. But with your credit score also being important to get you a house and other things, also you need to be saving and investing. You need to find a way to grow your money. Our generation specifically, the young generation, we're talking a lot about investments, about Robinhood, about, what stocks are better. I know this is not something that back in the day was talked about a lot. Obviously, we're taught a lot in school when you go for finance or econ or anything in business about the investment world. And one of the things that we're taught the most is you need to diversify and you need to hedge your risks. And the importance of that is, although you could get great gain from those accounts, you can also lose a lot. And you need to make sure it's a little diversified and also based on your life situation. When you're younger, you can take more of the risk with growing. When you're older, you want more of those income-based, monthly dividends, quarterly dividends. And you want to have different kinds of accounts too. A lot of us don't have just one account. We have checkings, we have savings, and we have, maybe 1 or 2 different investment accounts to try different strategies. So making sure you hedge all of your risks through diversity would be my second piece.
All right. Thank you, Katrina. And next up is Vivi.
Yes, so my unknown truth has to do with assets and liabilities. I wish I would have known about investing and asset management, specifically like real estate, younger. Okay, how assets appreciate and which ones depreciate, just to make better financial decisions. So, as a soldier, I can tell you that you move a lot. Like every 2 to 3 years, you're moving. And so I never bought a home while I was in the military. I was afraid to because I didn't want to get stuck with 2 mortgages, right? One on wherever it was that I moved from and where I was going to go. And so I always rented. And I mean, I learned later that it could be done appropriately, right? But I just loved being able to pick up without a hassle and having to worry about that stuff. And so also when you rent, you know, you're kind of safe because you end your contract. They usually have a military clause and you just go and you don't have to worry about it. But then because I did that, I didn't learn about VA loans and the power that they have because not everybody has that. We're the only group of people that can use them. And so they're very useful. And so I kind of regret that a little bit. But now I know, so we're good. That's it for my unknown truth.
All right. Thank you, Vivi. And my unknown truth is regarding budgeting. I have been so surprised to see how many people do not have a budget and don't, they live paycheck to paycheck and wondering, at the end of the month, where did it all go? And one thing I did learn about budgeting is if you don't plan to save, then you're going to fail. And the best way to budget is what they call the personal financial budgeting thing is 50-30-20, where I use what I call the 4 quarters method. The 50-30-20 is, 25% of your money goes towards your mortgage. 25% goes to your monthly bills. Then they say 30% is your fund money and 20% is your savings. I prefer 25% for all 4 categories. And this way you can have, your fund money, you're saving 25% for your future. 5% of that should go into a savings account, and then 20% into whatever investment vehicles that you want to take advantage of. That is worked for me for, all my life. My mom taught it to me around the kitchen table, tried to teach it to my family members. And that is how I came up with the 4 quarters method. And just hope that helps other people with their finances. The next topic we're going to talk about is why is financial literacy important and how does it affect you in your stage of life? Katrina, you're first up.
Microphone. Thanks, Jen. So for me, I would say personally, as I mentioned, my parents, low on death, but they did unfortunately have the tragic incident with their health. And so for that, had they financially educated themselves in general, just a little bit more on the modern products, and, if my mom had sort of educated herself more on finances and stuff, because as Vivi had mentioned, traditional gender roles, my mom was like, I save money under a couch and the rest of finance is taken care of by my dad. So she educated herself more. My dad had been open to more modern approaches or learning about them. I think in a lot of ways that would have saved us more money and also helped been a more lasting resource. Not that what we don't have right now isn't lasting, but since it's so tied up and restricted, that makes it much more difficult. And, it's sort of inhibited in our lives a little later. Also, just as a young person, I know that it's really important for us to sort of set aside where things should be. We're trying to build up our lives. We're trying to reach our goals, and we're broke. It's just being honest. We're 23. We're out of college. We're paying off college debts. We don't got much money. So it's about figuring out where to allocate, how to allocate, and what might be the best decisions to help you later on to build out wealth for those goals and family, whatever else it is you have planned to be okay. And having that independence away from your own parents. That way you can have your money and they can have their money.
All right. Thank you, Katrina. Next up is Vivi.
So financial literacy is important, not only so you can make sound financial decisions, but life decisions, period. Like not knowing how credit works or how it gets affected, what makes it go up, down, not knowing your purchasing power, your net worth. Like this is stuff you need to learn and then know and then apply it to whatever your situation is. Okay, this is why financial literacy is important. Okay, it makes it really difficult to stick to a budget if you don't know how interest works, how it's going to affect your payments. What you think you owe, okay, is not always what you actually pay. And I know now, right? But when I was younger, it really just stressed me out. Finances stress me out. I have to pay everything on time or ahead of time, or I will get stressed. Like I'm that type of person. Okay, I cannot pay anything late. So it just stems from the environment that I grew up in, and we won't go into that. But I can tell you that we're talking about life stages, right? You can have everything figured out when you're a single person, but once you get married, that dynamic changes because one, is not going to be as financially good as the other one. That's just reality. So I can tell you that when I got married, right, I might have been financially literate because I learned it, but my husband wasn't. So I had to teach him, and we had to grow together, because once you're a couple, it's together, right? And so I had gotten some financial education from the Army, because the Army does teach you some of it. But my husband, in the environment that he grew up in, did not. Like, his parents were the type of people that, not because of their fault, they were always working 2-3 jobs at a time just to make ends meet. So I don't know if some of you can relate, but getting that pink slip, that yellow slip, because your electricity bill, whatever utility bill, was late, that was normal to him, but it wasn't to me. So we had to work on that a little bit. And so he admitted this stuff to me, like, before we got married. So I knew kind of what I was getting into, but not really. But, this put a lot of stress on our marriage, to the point where we almost got divorced. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. Okay. Finances is one of the top causes of divorce. But we made it work. We're still here today. And this year is going to be our 19th year of marriage. So there you go.
Congratulations, Vivi. And that was a good story. Next up is Alexis.
Yeah, so the thing I want to talk about when it comes to this section is looking at the long-term planning. So you heard Katrina talk about credit cards, you heard Vivi talk about the power of having assets, Jen talked about budgeting and 4 quarters. And one of the things that I've ran into with meeting some individuals is some people are just living for today, right? So they have no type of, you know, financial plans in store. And just like Vivi talked about, one is a big stress to individuals when you're just going through the paces and you're trying to figure it out. And just like Vivi said, she brought up something that was real, important, that hey, you as a person may be single, you may have it figured out, but you may come into somebody's life, or somebody may come into your life that just out there, like we say, just out there flapping, right? They're just winging it, going through the paces. So, it's very important for you to start doing the long-term planning and figure out, hey, where do I want to be in the next 10, 20, 30 years? How do I get there? And kind of what's out there for me to be able to achieve those goals. So, when somebody does ask you the question of, hey, well, when do you see yourself retiring? How much money do you see yourself needing in retirement, not only annually, but monthly? You can go and you can give them an answer, but you will find it very interesting how many people will get asked that question and their answer is, I've never really thought about it. So definitely look at one, like I said, starting early, but doing that long-term planning and figure out what do you need to do, what do you need to put in place to be able to, again, do what you want to do and live the way you want to live later on in life, and not have to worry about money or funds being the factor as to why you don't.
Good points, Alexis. Absolutely. And in my phase of life, my big concern is the complexity of financial products. When I first started my investing life as a young adult, index universal life insurance didn't exist. The best thing that you could do if you weren't investing directly in the stock market was to participate in a whole life policy. That was the thing that my financial advisor told me, put your money here. And Now we have index universal life policies, which are so much more powerful. Unfortunately, though, I got sick and I came down with cancer. And unfortunately, in order to use an index universal life policy, you have to be able to pass a medical exam, which I can't do. And you come to find out, 30% of people that we work with can't qualify for medical reasons. So I wish I had one. I don't qualify for it now. So don't wait, until you're older to try to be able to utilize these products. There are other options if you don't qualify for an IUL, but they're not as nice. So if you do qualify for an index universal life policy, it is a great vehicle for you to help build your wealth, where you can participate in the upside of the stock market without the downside risk. I wish I had that opportunity now, but that life teaches us our lessons. And that is my unknown truth for the increasing complexity of financial products. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in today. Please share this podcast with your friends, families, or anyone that you think might benefit from it. We want to reach as many people as possible so everyone can take control of their financial future. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode, and follow us on our social media for more financial tips, resources, and updates. My information is above my head. I think all of our panelists have their social media handles. So that is the unknown truth for today.